welcome to today's show. I want to talk a little bit about sacred cows, what they are, how they get in the way of your life, your business, the things that you say that you want most. I want to talk about what they are ultimately costing you. So when I say sacred cow, it is those things that we are holding onto so tightly. It is either beliefs, it is the areas of comfort or discomfort. It is the people, it is the things, it is the systems, it is the processes, it is the something that we are not allowing ourselves to see the truth in. We are not allowing ourselves to actually assess what it's costing in our life or our business, in our leadership. It is those things that we always have a justification or an excuse as to why we can't touch that thing. And so I want to give you an example as I've been, in the throes of working on strategic plans and looking at how to call in what my clients want for 2023 moving into the new year. The topic of sacred cows always comes up. In fact, one of the things I ask my clients before we even start working is, do you have any sacred cows? And first of all, the answer is always yes. I have sacred cows. We all have sacred cows. It's why I hire coaches and work with people to help me see around the edges and see the blind spots in my own business. The next question always is, as we do this work together, are they on the table for discussion? Because here's the thing. There is a quote, and I love this quote that says, "It is not the water outside the boat that sinks the boat. It is the leak. It is the hole. It is the very small space inside the boat that is actually letting the water in that's going to sink the boat." And that is what a sacred cow is. It's when you say, this is what I want, this is the next level, this is what I desire, and you're still holding on to that thing that's either not performing at its highest and best capacity, that thing that is stopping you from stepping into your next level, that thing that while it's costing you, it's far more comfortable to hold on to something that kind of works, doesn't work, it's just what it is, versus letting it go and stepping into something new. Or it's that person on the team where you have qualified and said, well, that's just whoever you might call it, right? Maybe we'll call it, that's just Stuart. Apologies to anyone out there named Stuart. I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that we oftentimes will say, well, that's just what it is, or that's just how that person operates, or that's just so-and-so. And I see this in organizations all the time. I see it in organizations, especially when we're talking about the conversation in diversity, equity, and inclusion, where they'll go, oh, that's just Bob. That's just the way Bob's been. He's been here 35 years. We just don't. And Bob happens to be the person that says inappropriate sexual comments or racist comments, or is completely a bully and dismisses the younger people on the team, or has that narcissistic energy. Whenever we afford the opportunity for the sacred cow to take priority, when we make the excuses, we justify, we buy into the bullshit around why that sacred cow is so valuable, it costs us everything else. It costs us the potentiality, the capacity, and the capabilities of oftentimes other people on the team. It diminishes the return on our investments. It diminishes an investment being other people we've hired. And I'll give you an example. One of the companies I worked with, I went in and I did a big training. We got really into some nitty gritty. We got into some of the vulnerable ways we show up as leaders. And I, of course, touched on the topic of sacred cows. So after the training was over, we were having dinner, which is one of my favorite spaces after I run an event or I do a workshop or I do training or retreats or anything. It's the carryover in the social space where the magic really happens. It's where the things get to integrate. It's where people start to really consider some of what was opened wide up, what was created in a space that was wide open to dig into, right? It's where when things were pushed or they were being challenged, there's a little bit more space to kind of air it out. And it's oftentimes where the coaching happens. And so I was with an organization and a couple of the leaders came up to me, the managers, and said, Candy, we have a question for you. And I always find this interesting because usually when we're going to ask a question in this realm, especially when it's connected to sacred cows, we already know the answer. We're looking for someone to validate our justification of why that sacred cow is so sacred. And I say that because oftentimes I will say to people, you probably already know the answer, Or I will say, do you really want my thoughts and my opinion, or are you just looking for me to agree with you? Which a lot of times stops people because it creates that space of accountability. It creates that space to put the responsibility of what is the ask they're making and why. So anyway, I had this group of leaders that came up, a couple of leaders, it was like 3 of them said, we have a question for you. I said, okay, and you probably know the answer. And they said, they already started to grimace, right? They kind of knew where this is going. So they were talking, they're like, well, we have this person, let's call him Stuart. I said, okay, tell me about Stuart. They're like, well, Stuart's been our top sales guy for the last 30 years. Stuart like really helps us hit our OP, hits our numbers, do these different things. And they're like, and because everybody loves my expression of and, they're like, and Stuart is probably a sacred cow. And I said, so let's talk about the fact that Stuart, and I said, so tell me why Stuart's a sacred cow. And they're like, because he's the person. We're like, well, that's just Stuart. He's inappropriate on multiple levels. He plays by a completely different set of rules. I had a rep like that once in my corporate days who thought he could override my authority on how we discounted deals. And I wrote him up. And I remember when my boss said to me, you can't write him up. He's our top sales guy. I said, either he plays by the same rules everybody else in our region plays by, or I will no longer close another deal for that specific area. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I'm like, because here's the thing, if we keep excusing the Stewarts, the Bobs, the whoever they are, the Carols, whoever they are, if we keep excusing that behavior and not holding them accountable to the integrity, the values, and the expectations that everybody else is expected to play in, we are creating that sinkhole in the boat. We are creating the space where the water is coming in and will eventually sink us. And here's the thing I want you to consider. We get so wrapped around our sacred cows. That's just Bob and he's our top sales guy. Sure. You might have 6 other rock stars on your team that haven't been given a space to show that to you because you keep letting the Bob or the Stuart or the Carol do the thing. And by the way, I'm not picking on any of these people. I'm just giving you a for instance, that you are so hung up on what they can do for your bottom line that you're not seeing the missed opportunity of the fact that you might have more than one other rock star. It could be 6 that are just waiting for a place to shine. And so the cost is you often lose your top talent. Top talent walks out of companies when that sacred cow keeps getting fed. And so I say that because I work with so many leaders. I work with so many business owners. I work with so many people in corporate who are so rigid around even having a conversation around that sacred cow and what it looks like. And here's the thing, it's killing you. It is absolutely affecting your efficiency, your productivity, your culture. There is so much right now conversation around culture and what that looks like and feels like. And oftentimes that culture there can be a pivot the minute that sacred cow is invited to, selected out, or asked and removed from the organization. And I'll give you another story of where this played out with a client of mine. This was several years ago, and we were doing planning. We were looking at what they needed to move to the next level. And there was a conversation around one particular employee that very clear wasn't the right fit, not the right seat, not the right butts, not the right direction, just was not the right fit. However, he and the business owner were really good friends. And so every time his name came up in discussion, the business owner's like, I don't know how to have that conversation. We're friends with his family. I can't do this. 3 years. 3 years we went around the axle having this conversation. I'm not kidding you. 3 years. When finally push came to shove, because they absolutely could not grow while this person had a seat on the bus. They could not. I'll never forget that phone call from my client when he reached out and he said, Candy, you're not going to believe what happened. I was like, so tell me, he's like, I finally told this person he doesn't have a seat on the bus, and you're not going to believe what he said to me. And I have to say, wasn't shocked by this at all. The response he said, the employee that needed to go, he looked at the business owner and said, well, it took you long enough. because he also knew he wasn't the right seat on the bus. But because there was this whole space, they have created this sacred cowness that said, I can't have the conversation, you can't have the conversation. Neither person was playing in a space that let them play at their highest and best capacity. The business was suffering. The CEO or the business owner was absolutely frustrated and losing his freaking mind. And the employee wasn't happy, wasn't fulfilled, wasn't doing the thing that lit him up. How does anyone win in that equation? I want you to understand those sacred cows are killing you. They are absolutely killing your energy, killing your drive, your passion, your intention, your opportunity to scale, to grow, to elevate. They are holding you back. And until you are willing to sit in a space to have that conversation that says, I acknowledge this is a sacred cow. That's part one. Part two is I acknowledge what the sacred cow is costing me and my business or my team and our company. Part three is I am willing to have the hard, the difficult, the courageous conversation that needs to be had because people don't want to address the elephant in the room. I've got to step up and lead. And that is the crux of everything when it comes to evaluating, assessing, and taking inspired action on how do you redirect from that sacred cow that's taken over the energy, the culture, the direction of your company and has become the sinkhole, become that little pinhole in your boat that is going to take you down. It means you need to lead up. It means you need to lean in and lead it out and forward and up and have the courageous, hard, difficult conversation. And here's the thing, more times than not in that conversation, you will probably get a response that says, oh, thank God, I didn't know how to leave either. Or the people that are been waiting to step into their greatness. Because that was the other thing the business owner said to me, he goes, oh my God, our culture shifted like overnight within a week. I said, I'm not surprised. Nobody could step up and shine because this shadow was holding them back. This sacred cow had so much power in the culture and in the organization that no one else had an opportunity to step up. Think about that for a minute. Think about that is an ultimate cost. When you could have a culture of rock star, high performing people that are invested, who are passionate, who are engaged, and who are showing up every day full out at their highest and best capacity, or you can continue to feed the sacred cow that's doing none of those things. And so I say that because I really want to urge you to think about, and this goes back to something I was talking about before, which is about your non-negotiables. Do you know your non-negotiables? Do you know what they are right now? You cannot elevate to your next level unless you know what no longer is like on the plate that's no longer available. Like you're not, it's got to be a non-negotiable. The things that got you here are not going to get you to the next level, right? So what are those non-negotiables? And are you willing to level up those non-negotiables? I hear people say, I want to embody this. I want to be this kind of leader. I want my organization to look like this. And I'm like, great. Are you willing to give up X, Y, and Z to get there? And then they kind of step back and they falter for a minute. And they're like, well, I'm like, well, nothing. Until you are ready to level up your non-negotiables, to address and look at the sacred cows you're holding onto so tightly and allow yourself the space to say, it's time to let that sacred cow go. You will not get to the next level. You cannot embody the level of leadership you desire. You will not feel the level of fulfillment you desire. You will find yourself frustrated. You will find yourself continuing to justify, apologizing, making excuses, rationalizing, and you will be losing and missing out on your best opportunities and your best people. I will tell you over and over and over and over and over again, I see this. There is no, well, we're just going to keep that. You keep a sacred cow. You keep something you know is not serving you or your business or your company or your team or your culture. If you keep holding on to that, if you insist that that is the non-negotiable, just then know and be willing to accept the cost associated with that. So with that, I hope y'all make it a great day. If you would like to have a deeper discussion around sacred cows, reach out. Please make sure that you subscribe below so that you can continue to stay connected to these conversations. Like I said, it's going to get real. It's going to get raw. It's going to get gritty. I don't have a filter, so I'm just going to say it the way it is. So with that, I want you to take some time and take some inventory on what sacred cows might be holding you back.